What up, what up? Welcome to the first episode of the Art Basel podcast. I'm your host, Tony MC, in the place to be. And that place right now is my home studio. For those of you who don't know, I've been a music journalist for the past 10 years, covering the hip hop culture between breaking news, new music, and more. But on this show, I'm doing something different. I want to be able to bring the rap world and the art world together in one platform. On this podcast, you're going to hear from various different types of creatives, from curators, graffiti artists, visual artists, photographers. So let's get it popping. My first two guests are two creatives who paved their own way in the art and hip hop worlds. They're the founders of the Museum of Graffiti and the Art of Hip Hop, which have become staples in the Wynwood area and the art community alone here in Miami. I got a chance to pull up on them in their new venue, the Private Gallery, which you'll be able to see during Art Basel 2024. So here's my conversation with my good friends, Ket and Allison Freidin.
Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. It's so funny because we've known each other for about a year or so, actually almost a year to the day. I remember when we met at an event, I believe it was hosted by our good friend Brittany Berger, shout out to her, shout out to Mindful Music Lab, and they had a panel where you spoke at, and you had the book. I think you had just put out the book, and that was really where I was like, yo, we finally have a place in Miami where the art world and hip hop really collided. What was the inspiration when you guys first got together? What was your, purpose for founding everything that you've got today?
So I think we came at it as a problem-solving solution. I think that really, if you're going to embark on any enterprise or any project, you really have to clearly identify what the mission and the purpose is. And both of us saw a tremendous opportunity for education and culture in Miami that wasn't being done and wasn't being tended to. And so we set out to change that and to contribute everything we have to the arts and culture scene here in Miami, but for a specific community that didn't really have that hub, the graffiti and hip hop community that didn't have something as official as what we've provided yet, and really take a nerdy deep dive into studying it and obviously Alan's an expert in it. He started 30-40 years ago instead of in 2019 when the company started, but we set out to provide for this community in the global graffiti community as well.
Alan, what about you?
It was exactly that. It was an opportunity, a need that we had identified. It was a lifelong dream to make it happen, but it was an answer to what we saw was an opportunity in Miami and in Wynwood. Wynwood is such a special place. It's a neighborhood that has so many artists participating and creating works of art, but nobody really speaking about it, teaching about it, and telling the whole history of the movement. And so we saw that as the perfect place, or this as the perfect place to introduce this concept to the world.
We're going to get to your career in a second, but I want to set the scene for people who can't really see what's going on here. We're actually sitting in the middle of the Private Gallery, which is a newer venue that you guys just opened up recently, correct?
Yeah, we opened this place up in May. That's where we're sitting right now. And this is really to connect our daily visitor with the artist directly. So, we're doing a ton of education inside both the Museum of Graffiti and the Art of Hip Hop on who these people are, but getting the creators connected with the collectors is a huge matchmaking process, and that's really what we're doing in here is people who really take this very seriously as we do, and are collecting this and believe in the value and the work and everything that goes into making the artwork and want to take it home. And so we have this really special place that makes you really feel comfortable and allows you to take your time when figuring out how to start art collecting and what really makes sense for you.
So, art collecting 101, I like that.
I mean, we have different levels in here for sure. There's some 101 and there's some 505.
Right?
It ranges for sure. But know, art is it's expensive,
Yeah.
and it's really an asset. You know, a lot of people are talking about art, and I explain to them, you know, whatever you paid for your couch, your art should cost much more than that. Your couch isn't your asset. Your art is an asset, and looking at it like that.
Yeah.
And you know, but there are a lot of different pieces in here at different levels.
Word, let's talk about a couple of them. Obviously, we're sitting in front of a couple of really dope pieces. The one behind me, I've been looking at since I got here. So talk about this one.
So the pieces around us are by Futura, formerly known as Futura 2000, and they both represent his style of painting. There's a lot of iconic symbols that he has in his painting, these recurring elements, the atom, cranes, some of the figures, the spray cans, these loose movements. And he is, I would say, the leader, if not the first abstract painter within the graffiti movement. He painted a very well-known and very famous train called the Break Train in 1980 that was a precursor to the style, and it was a moment in time when he decided to break away from letter painting on trains and create something brand new and abstract. That train sort of speaks to this style and would launch his career in a different direction. These paintings are important because, you know, his work is obviously today very sought after. They're very expensive works. He is a global leader in this movement, globally recognized contemporary artist who's doing some of the biggest things in the world. Just this year with the Olympics, he was a big part of the Olympics. He created the outfits for Nike, for Team Japan in breaking and Team USA in breaking. As far as other outfits that he created, he was part of these ceremonies in Paris, and so he is that sort of top dog, so to speak, in the art world that has transcended graffiti and street art and all these labels, but just is a huge contemporary artist. So it's no surprise to me that you're attracted to these because he really knows what he's doing with paint and composition and color, and they're quite remarkable.
No, they are for sure. And that's actually one of the purposes of this podcast is to educate, right? Because I didn't know any of that. So you teaching me right now, you schooling me. So, I mean, it's amazing to hear it from an expert, someone who knows this art personally and can break it down just the way that you did. We're actually going to get into another part of your career. You've been around for about 30, 40 years, like tagging, making different art. So talk about the beginning, like how you got into it.
Sure. So, I'm a native New Yorker. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and in Queens, New York. I discovered graffiti as a young person. Along with hip hop, for me, it was part of my neighborhood. I grew up in a neighborhood in Brooklyn called Williamsburg. At the time, it was completely full of graffiti on the streets, tagging, pieces, throw-ups, everything. The trains ran overhead, so it was a neighborhood that had an elevated train line. So if you're hanging out, you could see pieces flying by on the train. And at the same time, because it was a predominantly Puerto Rican neighborhood, there was a lot of music in the streets, and so you would be outside and you'd hear cars passing by with all kinds of music, whether it was freestyle or disco, and eventually, or salsa or merengue, and eventually it became rap music. And so for me, I discovered rap music outside in the streets. Just the same place that I discovered graffiti. It wasn't hip hop. Hip hop didn't exist. There was no such thing as hip hop. It was all separate. Breakers were breakers. Graffiti artists were graffiti artists. There were all different kinds of specialties that people got into. It just happened that we all maybe lived in the same projects together or went to the same elementary schools together. And so I discovered this when I was in elementary school, and I was very much attracted to it because I was attracted to things that were fun to do outside. Breaking was fun to do. You could do it outside. You didn't do it in your house. Playing basketball, same thing. Doing graffiti became the same thing. It was things to do that young people were doing. And like every other young boy at the time, I wanted to get into it and discover what it was about and do it. And so by the time I was a teenager, I started writing for the first time. I got together with friends and started painting the trains in New York City. And to me, that was an introduction to this world. Because I started actually painting, I got to meet the artists of the time, the older guys that were doing it, the younger kids like me that were coming up. And it was just the right place at the right time. I was very fortunate to be there and experience it. I always thought that I was too late, because by the time that I started painting in the late 80s, breaking had already disappeared. Graffiti was fizzling out. But it was my generation and my friends and myself that decided to participate and keep it going when the older generation had already sort of aged out. By the time you were 16, back in those days, you didn't do graffiti anymore. It was over. 16 is retirement.
Wow.
You retired at 16 because at 16, the way that the law treats you is different. You're no longer a minor. And so people that cared about criminality didn't want to have a criminal record, and so they just quit at 16. Only the hardcore writers continued, but mostly there was no reason to continue if you've done it so long. It was time to move on with your life. Think about your future, whatever it might be. And so for me, it was different. I started graffiti, or I started painting later, and so I didn't care about that criminal mischief thing.
Right.
I just wanted to be part of something special, and that's kind of how I was introduced to it. Unfortunately, during the time that I came up, it was also the time of the crack epidemic in New York City, the AIDS epidemic in New York City, and so the older generation was dealing with that. They were dealing with addiction, they were dealing with disease, and we lost many people to those plagues, so to speak. I dodged that because I didn't go down the drug route. I didn't go down those routes, and I turned to art and to mischief and to having fun, and fell in love with it, and just kind of never left it and stuck with it.
What were some of the, I guess, like earlier pieces that you remember creating that were like just like mind-blowing to you?
For me, that I created myself?
Yeah.
It's funny. For me, I don't know that I feel like I created mind-blowing pieces. I always felt that I was more, not even that I felt, the truth is, I was always more of a bomber. Even though I pieced and I did everything, I was more into taking over, and my crew was most known for taking over space and becoming the kings and running things.
Oh.
And so we were more feared than admired for style, so to speak. Even though we had stylists in the crew, we approached it very, very differently. We were trying to take over and be kings of the trains and kings of the city. And so my favorite things were painting everywhere, painting the insides of the trains and the outsides of the trains, writing my name 1,000 times in one night. And so my memories were more about camaraderie, about taking over, about painting places that we weren't supposed to paint, and about getting away with it. A lot of times, we look at this now, these are paintings that are done in a very calm setting in someone's studio. You walk around Wynwood, a lot of the paintings, or most of the paintings that are in the neighborhood, they're done either day or night, they're sanctioned. Even the illegal ones, it's not a big deal here. This is not a hot neighborhood. I never painted in a Disneyland environment like this. I painted in the subway trains, in the tunnels, in the train yards. It was always a risk of getting arrested. My most vivid stories are probably the ones of me getting away from the police because we got chased so frequently when we were doing all that stuff back in the days. And so I don't have a favorite piece. I'm just glad to be here to tell the story.
Yeah, we're glad you're here too.
a lot of the guys that I grew up with, that I painted with, they're not alive. They didn't make it. And so I'm just here sort of repping for the crew and for this culture.
So what brought you down here?
I came down here because of this neighborhood. I discovered it in maybe 2008. Okay. There was a buzz about it because of what Primary Flight was doing. Primary Flight was Typo and Books and these guys, and they had started getting walls in this neighborhood and they were plugged in, they started inviting people down to paint. And so we all started hearing this buzz that there's a neighborhood in Miami where you could just kind of come and paint. And so I came down here to see for myself, connected with those cats, painted, and kept coming back every year. And kept coming back and kept painting more and more, and I saw this neighborhood really transform into what it is today. So about 6 years or 7 years ago, I decided to move here full time to pursue a career in art and in graffiti, which I had never done. I've never did this as a full-time career. It was always something that I did on the side. And so I decided, I guess it was perhaps something like a midlife crisis or a sort of a decision to shift gears in my life. And I thought that Wynwood had an opportunity for me to flex and do something that hadn't been done yet. And Miami Beach was a damn good place to live. It's where I live today. And why not get out of the cold and move to the heat?
He was like 5 years before the rest of the New Yorkers decided to move down here.
Yeah.
He's always been known to be ahead of the trend. He picked up on this a few years before everybody else. But in fairness, he also went to middle school or elementary school here.
Yeah, so
he had some ties.
I have family here.
Okay.
So besides being in Wynwood, I started hanging out in South Beach in 91. I started hanging out in South Beach, and I did the club thing down there. I used to go to the clubs in Kendall back in the days in the 80s. Yeah. And so I've been coming down here because my mom lived down here. And so I was always this kid that was going back and forth. And for a while, I even lived here. I lived in Hialeah when I was a very young kid. And so I knew Miami. I never thought that I would live Miami because I escaped Miami as a child. But now, later in life, I saw it a bit different. The heat didn't scare me.
Nice.
And so instead it was more attractive to me, so I came back.
That's dope, man. And now, obviously, you guys are running a really dope business.
A lot of them.
Yeah, several. How did the idea for the museum come about?
Well, it came about in a few ways. So for me, going back to the 80s, I fell in love with this movement from seeing it in person, but because of the time that it was being destroyed in front of my eyes. And so the trains were being painted over, the walls were being painted over. It was seen as a bad thing. There was nothing to celebrate about what we're talking about then. I was lucky enough to meet a man named Henry Chalfant, who was a photographer, who actually this book on this coffee table is by him and Martha Cooper. He was a mentor to me when I was a teenager.
Wow.
And he said a few things to me. One of the things that was most important, he said, you have to document your own movement. I'm out of it. I'm moving on. He stopped doing the work. The books came out. He was on to becoming a filmmaker. Me, Ven, Nick, a couple of us, Antar. He said, you guys have cameras. Go take pictures. It's your responsibility. I'm out. And we all took it very serious. I never stopped. Actually, none of us ever stopped. We never stopped. We started documenting our own movement. And while we did that, we started meeting the older writers and started trading photos, and we started learning about history. And we started meeting all these old cats, and we became historians and passionate about preservation and learning about it. We met another mentor, which was phase 2, and he also said the same thing. He's like, you not only have to document it, you have to write it. Don't let other people own our history. We have to tell our history, because the other people are going to come in and they're not going to tell you the real truth. They're going to tell you some bullshit that's fake and rewrite the story that you're seeing and living right now. Again, that really, really mattered to me. And so that was the beginning of this work. So this work for me started in the 80s,
Right.
gathering information, doing video interviews, doing recorded interviews, just like this. I've been doing this.
Dope.
It's been 30 years of doing this. And so I have these archives and these files that I've been amassing and collecting and traveling and documenting that have just been the Museum of Graffiti in my house.
Oh, wow.
And so when we met and discovering Wynwood and seeing the opportunity, the idea was, you've got all this information and this access and this passion, why don't we do something and finally build something that can be that place, that can represent and do the work that you do just by yourself. It's the work that I was doing by myself isn't the work of one person. It takes a staff, it takes a museum, it takes an institution to do that kind of work, at least to do it consistently, and then to be able to use it to present it to the public, to teach.
Right.
It was something that us coming together allowed for that to happen. You know, we had that synergy and that passion for preservation, for storytelling, for art, for community. Us coming together allowed it to be not just me, now it's 2 of me. It's us, right?
Yeah.
And then what we did is we decided to focus on really creating this. I quit my job. She quit her job. We rolled up our sleeves, business plan, rolled it out, created the first Museum of Graffiti, ran the gift shop, ran the front counter, ran everything, learned what it is, trained the next people to do it, and then just kept growing incrementally, slowly but surely. But it was because we saw a deep value in this artistic movement that up until our generation, it wasn't like that. Right. New generations, you know, our generation and younger, they get it. We do graffiti classes, drawing classes, where adults, parents bring their young children from 5 and up. That would have never happened when I was growing up. Wow. Those kids were getting ass whippings if they were doing that kind of stuff. Yeah. Right now, the parents want them because people recognize what we've been talking about all this time for 30 plus years, 50 years, that although this has vandalism as part of it, it also has art as part of it. It's healing, it's important, it's cultural, it's viable, it's necessary. People get it now. You know, now, you know, when we started this thing out, people said, why'd you need a graffiti museum? For what? Graffiti isn't even art. We recently heard that. Wow. We're like, we're going to teach you.
They changed their tune.
They've changed their tune. But we had to show them. You know, sometimes you have to walk, what does it say? You have to walk the horse to water. Right. And that's what we've been doing. Every single day, people come in. Their minds are changed that this is an art form that's viable, that's important, and you might not agree with it. You might not even love it, but you can't take away from the fact that it's art.
What were some of the hardships that you guys overcame to establish your businesses today?
There's a hardship every day. You know, like it's just what's the hardship du jour? You know, we opened in December. Neither of us had ever run a museum before. Neither of us had ever owned a gift shop before. Neither of us had, you know, run an online business before. So, I mean, I think that like just being self-taught in every single aspect of this business. Alan was in advertising and in publication, and we don't advertise. So, you know, like, but there's some of these things that can apply. Certainly the things that I did can apply and be helpful. You know, my training and background can be helpful, but we were really kind of starting without strategic partners that were mentoring us. We definitely set meetings with people, talked to people, got as much information as we could. Probably a year leading up to that, I would eat lunch with somebody new every single day. They could somehow like maybe drop like one piece of knowledge on me that would be a little bit better. And then, I mean, the obvious one that impacted everybody but impacted us differently is that we opened December 2019 and we were off to the races, and we picked up so much momentum when we first opened, a lot in thanks to the fact that we were like in the New York Times the day we opened. We opened during Basel. We had a packed house. It was totally wild, and COVID happened 2 to 3 months later, I'd say. So as new business owners who were just learning the business, we were in a unique situation, unlike businesses that had been open for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years that kind of had their sea legs like ready to go. Is like we had been open literally for 3 months and we're closing down. We're like, all right, this wasn't in the business plan. To skip revenue for a month and still have to pay the landlord and still have to pay insurance and all of that stuff. And all of that was so weird. Everybody knows, any business owner who owned a business during that time all have different stories, but the same general thing is like,
right.
We had no idea what was going on. But the changing of the neighborhood, the gentrification, the big G word, in Wynwood is a big thing that we face every day. We have no idea when the streets are going to be closed around our businesses because a giant, hotel is going up. We don't know, when the next art gallery down the street from us is going to close down because the rent is too high. We're in the middle of a neighborhood that's going under a complete change from what we fell in love with to we'll see where it ends up. There's something to say that you really can't fight the tide from coming in. Certain areas of Miami do have preservation, like the Art Deco district on South Beach on Ocean Drive. Those buildings aren't going anywhere. No one's touching those. But that didn't exist here in Wynwood. And I think a lot of it has to do with the artists not having enough knowledge about their rights, perhaps, or not having enough of a voice at the very beginning, or not having the wherewithal but not having the experience to forecast what was happening in order to jump into preservation mode. I think, I was definitely at Wynwood bid meetings like years ago screaming about that this is just, have the potential to have the best neighborhood in the entire country. Let's not ruin this.
Right.
And so it's something we deal with every single day. I mean, now that we have 3 different locations, like we handle different things as they come, everything from leaks to staffing issues to, everything,
right.
Planning which partners make sense for us, making sure we're aligning in the right ways, and all of that. So you pick the day and I'll tell you what problems we encounter, but overall the good 100% outweighs the bad.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, it seems like you guys don't even show it. Like from the outside looking in, it doesn't look like you guys face any of that. So you guys are doing a really good job at handling it. Who were some of the first artists that came in and that you guys displayed in the museum?
Wow. There were many. When we opened the Museum of Graffiti, the first solo exhibition was by Shu, who's a pioneer writer from Holland, from Amsterdam. So he was our first big solo show. But we also had a group show on style writing that had so many artists in it, from Mayor 139, who actually relocated to join us in opening the museum, to paintings by Sonic and Don D. White, Blade, Quick, photos by Henry Chalfant, who I mentioned earlier, Martha Cooper. We were fortunate enough that when we first opened, we had the support of what seemed like the whole world, like the entire graffiti world. People showed up. I mean, it was wild people they just showed up.
Wow.
You know, we invited people, but people just, I mean, from all over the world,
crazy.
people would come in and break down into tears and be very emotional because it had finally happened. There was finally a place that respected this art movement, that treated it as something special, and that got it, and that was telling the story from the perspective of the artist, not from the perspective of the prosecutors or the media. And so we had, I mean, the list is really long. Jim Prigoff, rest in peace. Just so many wonderful people.
So I think what's important though to point out is that the original exhibition inside the original Museum of Graffiti was one like semi-permanent exhibition that he's talking about, that but it was really focused on old school. It was heavily old school. I think, you know, it stopped at like 1990 or somewhere around then, maybe the early 2000s, a couple little, you know, nuanced, more collectible stuff. But the way that we were able to tell the story of what was happening today was by taking over massive murals on the outside. So back then, I was talking about 5 years ago. When I say back in the olden days of Winwood, like literally 5 years ago, in this building where we are, these windows were not here. You know, the building owners created big glass storefront windows and stuff like that recently, but we had carte blanche to paint crazy, giant, sprawling murals, and we brought in the best artists in the world to paint those murals and to curate basically this corridor that was going to blow the rest of the neighborhood out of the water. So we were flying in teams from New York and teams from LA and, you know, people from South America and all of it to really surround just our building with the best art you've ever seen, because obviously what was going to happen is that people were going to act as a magnet. You know, people are going to start walking around 2nd Avenue and see one cool mural, and then wait, you keep going, there's another one, and all of a sudden you get to the Museum of Graffiti. And so instead of going the traditional advertising, we never bought a single digital ad. We never did a billboard. We never took an ad out in a magazine. We never did any of that. But that wasn't our strategy. Our strategy was to win with the world's best curated murals you've ever seen. And so we brought all those people to do the outside and kept the inside super old school. And another strategy of including the artists was dropping things inside our gift shop that you could only find with us. And so we created products with Dr. Dax from Atlanta that were only available. A-Hole Sniffs Glue, those umbrellas the first year, skate decks with Blade. We were working directly to create things, little things that people could take home. This is before our gallery and before our gift shop is now what our gift shop is. You had no way of buying things online back then. Back then is literally 2019. You couldn't go on a website and buy anything from us. We didn't have one. You had to physically walk into the Museum of Graffiti, go into that store and line up and get your product.
Old school for real.
Yeah, and so there, you know, and stuff was slick, and that was really an incredible way of tying in local, international, national artists from the now, because in the exhibition that we showed, it was mainly old school.
The lineup that she's talking about is crazy. It was John 156, OG Slick, Cess,
Rambo,
Mast, Yes 2, Doves, Rambo, Ernie Velez, Shoe,
Abstract and Enties,
Ross Terms, Tico, Marvel, who else?
I mean, I
don't even know.
Yeah, but it was just like,
it's a crazy.
We got
crazy
everybody down, you know, and it's changing. And I'm not saying, like, if you come right now, all of those murals are gone for the most part, except the OG Slick mural is the only one still running. But we've been able to like go vertical now. Now we have 8-story buildings, and we, you know, covered the entire Moxie Hotel in murals that are 8 stories. So, you know, when one door closes, another door opens. I do believe in having street level art that people can touch and interact with and not feel scared or guarded like they would a piece in a museum, and they can touch it and put their feet on it and take selfies with it. But now, the scale is a lot bigger. If you walk around Wynwood, you're going to see buildings that have 8-story murals on them, and these artists are painting them by hand. These are not being printed on there. These are not skins. This is all hand-painted mural where you can only come back, 2, maybe 3 feet off of what you're painting to see that whole thing come together. It's really the most wild thing I've ever seen.
Nah, I feel like I've seen so many different murals just around here that I would have never even imagined that could be created. You know what I mean?
Sure. There's murals in the original Museum of Graffiti building by John One and Deffer that are still there. Even though the Museum of Graffiti is not in that building, those murals have been completely untouched and preserved, and we've been lucky. We've been really lucky that these artists have blessed us. It's like our cup runneth over.
Right. Now, you guys have done a lot of great exhibitions over the years. One that obviously I remember from a couple months ago was the Chrome OG exhibition that was really successful. You actually had him come, and that was a rare moment for everybody.
I think that any time an artist gets to be introduced to a new audience, it's beneficial for the artist. And it was beneficial. This specific one was beneficial to the artist for sure, because we have travelers from around the entire world coming in every day that are coming to Miami and get to learn about Miami talent. Specifically, he had a whole feature on him, but this was a bigger deal for the Miami community who came of age in the mid to late 90s when Chrome and Crook and kind of really had a good run.
Right.
And they really did a lot of work in the city in terms of bombing and piecing and getting their names out there. And the famous story with them getting arrested and their bond being, the prosecutors asked for $1 million bond. And, there was, Chrome has since dealt with addiction, gone to jail. I'm not telling anybody anything that's not commonly known. And he moved out to LA. And for Chrome to have this big homecoming and show the world what he is besides, a street bomber, a drug addict, somebody who went to jail, and all this stuff, this tumultuous life in the streets, for him to come and show what he's capable of in front of this huge audience with the incredible sponsors that we were able to get. Pitbull himself was really moved by Chrome when he was coming of age. He had Voli come in and sponsor the entire thing to support him, and that really was able to make that connection for them. And there's a lot of really positive things that come out of this for everybody when we get to do these shows. Right now in the Museum of Graffiti, we have Mick LaRock from Holland. She got to come in and make an incredible site-specific installation here, and had the opportunity to come show in the United States and have a solo show here for the first time in the United States. Our next exhibition will be a group, a duo from Germany who's going to be showing in the United States for the first time. This is a big deal for us to be able to get these artists in here, for the community, for them, for the whole movement when it spreads like this on such a high level. These
are people that could easily be doing museum shows at the ICA or wherever, MoCA in Miami, any place, any institution in the world, actually, they're of that level, but those people just don't know this art movement.
Right.
So we're bringing those people over, whether it's Mick LaRock or Moses and Taps or Shu or whoever it might be, or Chrome that you mentioned, and presenting them in the way that they should be presented.
Right.
And honoring them in that way. They're stepping up and doing incredible work, some of the best work that they've ever done in their career, so that other institutions could also learn, not just for the public, but for our peers, from people in the art world, in the gallery world, in the museum world, so that they could hopefully also invite them to go do a show at their place,
Right.
at their institution. And that's happened. We've had people that have shown with us and then all of a sudden are showing in Texas or wherever they're moving, because people were able to see the quality of their work, come and visit us at the museum and be introduced, and then
Right.
go on and continue to do good work. And so for us, it's a win-win situation.
And the artists are selling their pieces and walking away with money to
Yeah.
keep creating, to live, to feed their families. We have a lot of success stories in 5 years where, you know, people say that financially the Museum of Graffiti has changed their lives, because these Chrome's shows sold out on day one. Sold out. Every single piece gone on day one.
Saber show
Saber
sold out.
show sold out. Ghost show sold out day one. That show was pre-sold out. And these are not like inexpensive pieces. We're talking thousands per piece, like
Right.
you know, several thousands of dollars per piece. And the Lady Pink show, almost everything except one piece sold out. And so we're making an impact that's impacting lives every single day, and it's probably the favorite part of my job is contributing to the financial security of the artists that we work with.
Nah, that's dope. It's great that you're able to at least help them, you know, make some great coin off of that, right? Now you're also making an impact, obviously, in the hip hop world. You recently opened up the Art of Hip Hop, which is right next door to us. You guys had the huge launch last year. Lots of people that pulled up. Talk about putting all of that together.
So the Art of Hip Hop is the behind the scenes look at the creatives in hip hop culture. The photographers, the designers, the flyer
graffiti
guys, the
writers.
graffiti writers, the video makers, the t-shirt designers, the album cover artists, all, you know, the logo makers, all these people that are big contributors to the look and feel of hip hop culture that most people don't know about. They work in the art departments, they work behind the scenes. They're actually the guys behind the camera. When you see that, when you see this,
Yeah.
it's people like that are part of hip hop as an industry that exists today. And so these people, many of them, have been documenting and working behind the scenes for 50 years, 40 years, whatever the case might be. For a long time in my career, post-college, I became one of those people. In the 90s, I launched a magazine called Stress. It was a street culture magazine out of New York City. First magazine to give a cover to Jay-Z. First magazine to do a cover with Eminem, Foxy Brown. The list is long. And so I worked within that industry and got to know the rappers, the DJs, the club promoters, the designers, the photographers. I worked with all these people, the label heads, the publicity department, everybody. And when I got into that world, I came in as an outlier, someone that's from the streets, trying to rattle things up to all these college students that were working, you know, in these yuppie fields. But there was love for hip hop, and there was a lot of people coming in from a street background into these industries saying, we don't need the yuppies, we've got our own talent. And so I came in with a large unit like that. And we told our stories. We told street stories. We told gang stories. We told drug stories. We told death stories. All these things, but all the while, the people that were doing it, whether they were writing or taking pictures, they were really important contributors. And we were all young. This was me in my early 20s, all of us.
Yeah.
You know, some of them went on to become large rappers, all kinds of people. Some of them are passed away already. Mm-hmm. And so all these people that have now blown up, they're around. And so I reconnected with all these people, and the Art of Hip Hop is a celebration and the storytelling behind hip hop culture through the behind the scenes lens of these people. Joe Conzo, who was shooting in the 70s in the Bronx, Phase 2, who was the first, important flyer designer for all those early Bronx parties or Manhattan and Queens parties, and who's an OG in the graffiti world as well, and who was an MC and a DJ and a b-boy. Martha Cooper, Henry Chalfant, Charlie Ahern, Danny Hastings, Jeanette Beckman, Lisa Leone, Bluster, Eric Hayes, Ernie Velez. The list is crazy.
Yeah.
All these people have contributed so much. When you think of the Beastie Boys or Run DMC, or you think of Adidas, or you think of Nike and Wu-Tang and Kendrick Lamar, all these people. And the newer heads, Derek G from Miami, Esdras, Deluzma from Miami, the people that are doing it today still. And so that's what that is. And it was for us kind of like a love letter to hip hop in celebrating 50 years of hip hop in a way that no one was doing it.
So that's what I think, like, you saw this come to life during Art Basel last year, but that's not where the art of hip hop actually started.
Oh, okay.
So the art of hip hop actually started when the 50-year anniversary of hip hop was coming our way, and graffiti being one of the elements of hip hop, and us thinking, like, how are we going to celebrate graffiti and throw graffiti its own party as the visual component, the visual art form of hip hop? And so we saw this huge opportunity at South by Southwest, where the biggest brands in the world, the biggest creators in the world, the film directors, like the tech people, all of them are headed to Austin, Texas for like 2 weeks in the month of March. You're kind of on the world stage with like everybody doing like epic shit. And so we're like, you know what, we're gonna have our own 50th anniversary celebration. And as we started talking about the visuals of hip hop and what that means to be like the graffiti component, you think about it, it's not just the graffiti artists, it's also these people that Alan are talking about. It's the people that built the visual identity, or the photographers, the fashion designers, the logo designers, all of it. And so we built out the space that told the visual identity of hip hop at South by Southwest. That was so successful that these folks came to us from Seoul, Korea, and said, we want you to open this in Seoul, Korea. So the art of hip hop actually started in Austin as a pop-up and moved from Austin in crates to Seoul, Korea.
Wow.
And from Seoul, Korea, after we opened there as a pop-up, that's when it came home and opened in a permanent location for Basel, when most people that are part of our local community saw it for the first time. But Art of Hip Hop had already been on the road as a traveling exhibition in honor of the 50-year anniversary of hip hop. We had no idea when we started this in Austin that this was going to be a full-time thing.
Right.
And still we struggle with it, because we're like, wow, this thing went gangbusters. Like, what are we supposed to do? We're sitting with this gem right here, and now it went from Austin to Korea. Does it come to Miami? Does it go to New York? Like, how do we maintain this and while not missing a beat on the Museum of Graffiti, and also making sure our gallery is rocking? Like, how do we do that? So it was obvious we just had to put them right next door to each other, so we could keep an eye on everybody. But eventually, the goals is that this grows in a way, and our infrastructure and our team grows in a way that, Alan and I don't have to have our physical eyes on these spaces every single day. Like, the idea is, our team grows where our current manager, who's incredible, can implement a team where, this movement, or what the movement that we've created just in the exhibition way, can go beyond, our block that we have the majority of the stake hold on. We own 3rd Avenue between 25th and 26th Street in Miami,
Dope.
And so, but the goal is to get it out into the world, and for us really in that space to become the world's leading authority when it comes to the visual creators behind hip hop, the #1 destination for hip hop art and photography.
Yo, and it really is, man. Like, there's a lot of dope pieces in there. So many different historical pieces that are in that space. You've had a lot of artists pull up there as well. You had Will Smith come through. You had Trick Daddy. You had Trina. You've had Fat Joe with Dyson doing the piece there dedicated to Fat Joe. So there were so many different highlights about that celebration during Basel last year for the launch here. What was your, I guess, like, standout moment from that time?
You know, I think that the photo of Alan and I with Will Smith says it all. Like, we had been working for 6 days with no sleep. You know, we were sleeping in the office at that point. We hadn't gotten city permits yet. You know, we were going back and forth, so we didn't know what we could build, what we couldn't build, what we were dealing with event permits and DJs and stages and all that stuff to set up for our opening. And we really hadn't slept in about 6 or 7 days, with the exception of a nap here and a nap there, because that's what it takes in order to do this properly, to show up in the middle of Art Basel, which is, you're on the world stage when it comes to art. So if you're not putting together the best exhibition in Miami that week, you may as well not even show up, in my opinion. And so if you look at our faces in any of those pictures, like, you're seeing zombies.
Yeah,
So
I remember.
Will Smith walks in, and Will Smith takes one look at the art of hip hop and was like a pig in shit. He was grinning from ear to ear. He could not stop smiling. He thought this was the greatest thing. His Fresh Prince album was up there. He is reminiscing so hard. He's seeing things he hasn't seen in years. You know, he's just glowing. Hey, let me get a picture with you too. He asks us for a photo. He's like, let me get a picture with you too. If you look at this picture and you see me and Ket's faces, we look like crypt walkers, like we just came out of the grave from 6 feet under, and Will Smith could not be happier to be there.
Damn.
And at the end of the day, that's why we built these businesses. It's about customer satisfaction, whether you bought a ticket for $12 to come see the exhibition, or, you know, you got dropped off in a limousine with security. Like, either way, we're there to make sure that you have the best experience, because we have so much pride in what we do. So, you know, obviously it means a lot to us. That guy was not paid to be there. We had no idea he was coming. He was not hired. Like, there are celebrities that genuinely want to come. Diplo comes by, you know, like they come by, you know, Questlove comes by, KRS-One comes by. Like, we have a product that we offer to people that's educational, that they want to come and see. And to me, the fact that some of the most successful people in the world are co-signing us or appreciating it, our production level, and the way that we're presenting ourselves, like, I can't even express it in words what it means to me.
This is culture, and so those people come because they understand culture and they're part of the culture. Why wouldn't they all come?
Right.
If they're in Miami, they haven't come. It's because they don't know about it,
Right.
or they don't have an in, and they might feel weird. Rick Ross came in by himself.
He paid a
JT
dollar.
Money came
Wow.
in by himself
That's dope.
and showed up. And all the young kids that work there, they don't know who he is.
Damn.
You know, so but this is, you know, generational.
Right.
It's different, but there's an interest. There's, you know, we're celebrating culture, so we're celebrating these people every day, even if their name is not on the wall. They helped build this, and so that's why I think for me it's incredible when they come through.
It's actually a great story to tie back to the Seoul, Korea, and the art of hip hop going to Seoul. Is that Ket and I were in Seoul with the pop up, and we're reading the WhatsApp chat, and they're arguing. The staff is like, we have a staff WhatsApp chat, and the staff is saying like, "Hey, Rick Ross is at the front desk. Should I charge him?" And like nobody's answering, and it's like like, I guess I'm gonna charge him. And then like I'm jumping in like in a time zone 8 hours later. I'm like, what the hell? You guys charged Rick Ross to come in the building.
That's crazy.
And then like, well, nobody was here to like do a waiver of admission. And I was like, all right, like he paid like just like everybody else does. And you know, luckily enough, you know, I got a heads up that Will Smith was coming and we didn't tax him for the $12.
That's crazy. Before we wrap up, you know, obviously Basel is coming up here soon. What do you guys have in store for that?
So much greatness, crazy. I mean, we are semi-rested now. We won't look like this later.
Yeah.
We have 3 massive exhibitions, each in one at each building. In this building, it'll be Tristan Eaton. You guys don't know Tristan Eaton, you have to come out and see it. He's incredible. He has incredible murals in Wynwood that have been around for a long time. But I would say he's one of the top 5 muralists in the entire world. So he'll be having a solo show here.
And just to tell you, sneak peek about that, he got an exclusive license from Marvel Comics, and the exhibition is going to be on the women's superheroes of Marvel.
Wow.
And so
Massive.
It's about women empowerment. It's about the impact of comics on this culture. It's about his love for all of this, and that is something that you don't want to miss. You want to go on to the next
That's massive,
one?
and he's going to do murals.
I gotta leave something to.
So the founding art director, creative director for Def Jam Records is a man named Cey Adams. Cey Adams is going to have a retrospective at the Art of Hip Hop. It's going to look at 40 years of his work. And so that's tremendous, from the 80s, or actually from the 70s, when he was still a graffiti writer, painting trains, until the work that he's doing today. Incredible journey. And so you'll really learn about this true American master that's going to be here.
And that is officially in partnership with Def Jam.
Dope.
So you're going to get to come to Art of Hip Hop. Def Jam is an official partner of that exhibition. You know, every single year we just have to blow last year out of the water, and I was, after last year, and you can attest to it, I was like, how are we going to do that?
Well,
And so
we're going to do it with these 3 shows.
Yeah, you're definitely going to do that.
Is OG Slick, and so OG Slick will be the headliner at the Museum of Graffiti.
Dope.
We're going to transform the entire building inside and out, and he's going to have also a semi-retrospective of his career and present some incredible rooms. He's doing many rooms in the museum. And so we have the West Coast, we have the East Coast, and then the music lineup is to be determined.
Word.
But I'm sure it's going to be crazy.
Oh, I know it's going to be crazy. Y'all definitely do it up every year.
And Modelo's coming back, and some
Perfect.
of our established partners that we've been working with for many years. I just like want to give a quick plug to them, because we really like cannot do this without people that believe in us. And
for sure.
So, you know, they've been kind of supporting us in such a big way for so long that like I don't even like to talk about Basel without talking about Modelo.
Basel is which weekend this year?
First weekend of December.
Okay. All right, cool. So we'll be able to tune into that. We'll definitely get everybody to come out to the Art of Hip Hop and Museum of Graffiti during Art Basel. Before we get out of here, like, where can everybody follow you at?
A few places. You can follow us at Museum of Graffiti on Instagram, at Museum of Graffiti on TikTok, and of course museumofgraffiti.com. Our website is a great place to see what we're doing, see the blog, check out the shop, book the events that are coming up. That's really where you'll get the tickets. And then also our YouTube channel, also Museum of Graffiti, is a great place to see a lot of educational content, studio visits, artist talks, interviews, all this great content that if you missed it in person or online, it's there. And it's a great sort of resource and archive for those that love this movement.
Dope. Well, I appreciate you coming through. I thank you so much for your time to talk about everything today. I learned a lot. I know everybody watching here learned a lot as well. Feel free to definitely check in with us the next time you guys have any kind of events or exhibitions, anything like that. We're going to be out there.
Sounds good.
I appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in. You already know this is Tony MC. Make sure to like and subscribe right here under that bar right there. Like and subscribe right now. This is a Art Basel podcast. Peace.